So I'm basically talking about, I'm going to make a presentation on the act of naming from community members' perspective. And it's basically the case of Telugu Catholics and Kerala Syrian Christians. And basically, this paper investigates parents' choice of first names or personal names for their children as an act of identity. So, the research, which was recently concluded, was driven by the following questions. What kind of identities is created by parents for themselves and for their children through the act of naming? Secondly, what name motivations govern parents' choice of first names among Telugu Catholics and Syrian Christians? Thirdly, what are the similarities and differences in name motivations between Telugu Catholics and Syrian Christians? And is the act of naming reflexive or constitutive? This last question was the most important question in this particular research. Let me also share the data elicitation methods that are used in this particular study. The data was elicited through bilingual surveys on Telugu Catholics and Syrian Christians. So, for Telugu Catholics, there was a translation of Telugu. There was Telugu as well as English. So people who were fluent in Telugu answered in Telugu. People who were more comfortable writing in English, they wrote in English. And whereas for the Syrian Christians, it was Malayalam and English. So people who wanted to write in Malayalam wrote in Malayalam, and people who wanted to write in English, they wrote in English. And multiple modes of surveys were administered in this particular study. So Google online surveys. So as we all know that there were some people are more comfortable with Google spreadsheets. So they used Google surveys, whereas others wanted a face-to-face interview. So it was completely dependent on what each participant was comfortable in. So group surveys. So this was a new method that I tried for this particular study, that I took permission from the parish priest. Because there were Christian communities, so I took permission from the parish priest, and the parish priest would make an announcement in the church, and then people were made to sit after the church, and then these survey questionnaires were distributed, and on the spot people participated. And this was, I think, a very good method to elicit data from a lot of people at a given point of time. So within half an hour, one could get at least 20 or 30 responses from the participants. So a total of 202 participants, that is 62 Telugu Catholics and 140 Syrian Christians, participated in the surveys. You can see that in comparison to the Syrian Christians, who are who number 140, the Telugu Catholics are just not even half of the Syrian Christians, and this was because many of them didn't trust me. When I went to the field, and then I tried, I requested a research scholar to help me out, who was also a native, but people did not trust, I could not establish instant trust with the participants, and more because there were some very sensitive items on caste, which were mentioned in the test item, and people felt that I was an agent of the government, and they didn't trust me, and many people withdrew from the survey, because of that. So this was, a major drawback of the study as far as the Telugu Catholics are concerned. So the survey collected the official names of community members, participants, as well as their family members. So the demographic details of members of the community members were also collected, that is their date of birth, their occupation, income and educational levels, and their linguistic backgrounds at the same time. So there were 20 test items And there were some test items on caste as well, as far as the Telugu Catholics are concerned. In total, there were 20 test items, and I'm going to present only a few test items focusing on the name motivations, which focus on the name motivations in this particular presentation. So, as far as the name motivations of participants and their family members, are concerned, the following questions were asked. How did you get your official name? So this was one item. Did your parents ever tell you why you got this name? So this kind of a test item would elicit the reasons for name motivations, or to keep certain kinds of names, or to get certain kinds of names. Is there a story behind your official name? So that was another question. And how did your children, spouse, siblings, parents get their official names, and list the main reason? So this was like a family question, a family survey. Why did your children, siblings, spouse, parents get this official name? List the main reasons. So this was, the question. And let me now also, quickly discuss present the data as far as the Syrian Christians are concerned. These are the data on name motivations as far as the Syrian Christians are concerned. So the motivation to keep a traditional male name, this is the reason that a particular participant gave, and this is the participants. He is basically giving reasons as to why he got a particular name. Okay, so this is not about the name given to his children, but he's basically saying why he got a particular name. So the third son gets the father's name. He is giving the reasons. That is why I got the name Joseph. This is the traditional way of naming in Kerala. Then let's also look at another motivation, the motivation for an invented male name. So this is actually a parent's reason for giving a certain kind of a name to his son. San means without, and without sin. So his name is actually Sin San. So he's giving the reason. So this is an invented male name. Let's also look at example 3, motivation for a new male name. So this is a new name according to the parent. So the parent is basically giving the reason to keep a certain kind of a name for his child. So the reason is, for a change, I didn't give ancestral names. Notice the difference between examples 2, 3 and 1. So they are completely different from each other. Then the fourth example, motivation for a Christian male name. My name comes from Job, the servant of God. So this is a person giving reasons for the kind of name that he got. Motivation for an Indian male name. We prefer typical Indian names of Sanskrit origin. So this is the response from parents who are basically giving reasons as in why their children got a certain kind of a name. Then we look at also example 6, motivation for an international female name. So this is a participant's reason given to get certain kind of name for herself. My dad likes European names, and also because it is a Christian name. Okay, so now let's also look at the motivations for Telugu Catholic names. And the first response is as follows. Motivation for a female pre-convert name. Named for reservation benefits, also after grandfather, and because the name sounds good. So these are the reasons which have been given for a particular by a particular participant to get a certain kind of a pre-convert name. So let's look at example 8, motivation for a male Christian name. My name is inspired by a church called Shauri Vari Devalayam, named after Saint Francis Xavier in Andhra Pradesh. So notice the difference between examples 7 and 8. They are completely contrasting. Then we look at example 9, motivation for a male name with dual meanings. So my son is from the blessings of Saint Anthony, and his letter is Dha as per his birthstone. So this is the reason which has been given by a parent to give a certain kind of a name to his child. So So the examples 8 and 9 are completely different from example 7. So example 7 is a pre-convert name, that is a name which is not a Christian name. Example 8 is a Christian name, and example 9 is actually a dual name, that is a Hindu name with an underlying Christian meaning, which is known only to the community members. So this is a very interesting aspect which was revealed about Telugu Catholics, is that a lot number of people have dual names. So dual names analyzed were of two types. One was actually because one was a Hindu name, which was an official name, and the other was a Christian name, which was kept only for baptismal records. In order to avail caste benefits, Christian names were never used as official names. So this was one kind of a dual name, and the second kind of a dual name was that to have a Hindu name, okay, a Sanskrit derived Hindu name with hidden Christian meanings which were only known to the community members, and this is one such example. So the actual name is Dheeraj of the person, but it's only, a certain sound being associated with a saint is only known to the community members, and it is hidden from the general public. So in example 1, the participant says that his naming was traditional. There is no active role of the parent in this act of naming. So whereas in examples, so just to revisit this example, this was during the 50s, and at that point of time, Syrian Christians, kept names from a select repertoire, of saint names, and there was a procedure. So the first son usually got the name of his paternal grandfather. The second son got the name of his maternal grandfather, and the third son would get the name of the father, and the fourth son would get the name of an uncle. So there was a procedure, there was a rule to keeping names, and this person was born during the 50s at that point of time. So that is the reason why he got a traditional name. So there is no, the role of the parent or the name giver is quite passive at this point of time, and this is also reflected in the reason which has been given in example 1. In examples 4 and 5, one can see that parents give religious factors when assigning names. So we can see that 4 and 5 are completely, of course, one is a Christian name and 5, but the other is an Indian name. But there are religious regions which have which are actually motivating parents to give names. And in example 7, we can see that parents list 3 positive reasons to to give a certain kind of a name. Reservation benefits, sounds good, and named after grandfather. So this is a typical, this is a pre-convert name. And in example 8, we can see that the Christian name is inspiration based. And in example 9, we can see that parents give 2 reasons to give the name: blessings of Saint Anthony and the letter Dha as per the name holder's birthstone. So you have a Christian religious factor, and it is also based on the Hindu astrology. Basically we can see that it's a dual name. So there are 2 religious factors which are basically motivating the parents to give that particular kind of name. And then if one also wants to compare, examples 2 and 3, these were basically, example 2 basically is the name which was given to a millennial child, and example 3 is basically the name, which was born during the 80s, a child which was born during the 80s. So the historical moment also influences parents to give certain kinds of names to their children. So this data, says that, the different time periods have a role to play in the kind of names that children, that community members are getting. So here is basically,
just 5 minutes to recap your paper, okay?
Sure. So basically, this is a kind of the social positionings. This chart basically gives the social positionings of parents as far as the Syrian Christians are concerned, and we can see that the similar attributes, which are similar, have been clubbed together. So traditional names, general names, Christian names, and common names, as we can see in example 1, whereas certain other kinds of qualities or attributes like meaningful, Indian, Hindu, come in a different kind of a space. So what basically I'm trying to say is that parents are creating a coherent identity for themselves through the act of naming for themselves and for their children. And these are the this is the social the different stances taken by Telugu Catholic parents. And again, we can see that similar attributes have been clubbed together: pre-convert, traditional, common, and singular meaning. So through these stances, parents are creating an identity for themselves and for their children. So these are the conclusions. I'll just quickly present the conclusion. The association with one category is related to the dissociation from opposite categories. So we can see that names which are singular are in contrast with names which are dual. The figures summarize the contrasting positions which have been taken by parents in the two Christian communities. And parents' choice of name attributes should be seen in terms of a range of social positionings, indicating what kind of social entities they want to be perceived as. So name attributes are associated with particular social values. So that is to whether to be traditional or to not be traditional, social positions and manner of thought. So in example one, it can be interpreted as a way of for parents to position themselves as traditional as and not modern, Christian and not Sanskrit derived Hindu names, common as per the naming conventions, and general but not rhyming names. In example 7, the parents state that the chosen name was kept to avail reservation benefits. It aligned with their pre-convert identity and also because the name sounded good. So in the above case, that is in example 7, the parents position themselves as aligning with their pre-convert identity. And in example 9, the parents have chosen a Hindu name with a hidden Christian meaning. The initial sound of the name Dha is derived from Tha in Saint Anthony. This is pronounced as Dha by the local community as Anthony and not Anthony. So in the above example, parents' name choice can be interpreted as positioning themselves in between, maintaining a Christian identity and also aligning to their pre-convert identity. The illustration of common name attributes in the figures can be interpreted as an illustration of common social positions to which parents position themselves. Social positionings that are close have been taken together by parents, showing proximity in social meanings, and this was something which I showed in the figures. The various social positionings taken by parents indicate that they position themselves in a coherent way. So in this paper, I have argued that the act of naming is constitutive as parents actively and consciously construct identities for themselves and for their children, and it is not reflexive or passive. So parents consciously align with certain identities and dissociate with others through the act of naming. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, Smita, for this beautiful presentation. And you have selected two communities, Telugu Catholics and Syrian Christians. So why you have selected only two? Is there kind of biasness to a study? Why so? Like
no, actually, I had already did a socio-onomastic study on Syrian Christians, and I basically am looking at all Indian Christian communities and how they name that is how they keep names or how they give names to their children. So I find this very fascinating because some groups basically try to give pan-Indian names, whereas certain other groups show a kind of a hybrid pattern in naming. So for a change, I wanted to explore Telugu Catholics because it is in the vicinity, and gradually I'll also move to other Indian Christian communities. So there is no particular reason, but I just wanted to contrast how Telugu Catholic names would differ from Syrian Christians.
Smita, you have mentioned somewhere there, especially in your abstract, that you have taken this constitutive approach,
Yeah.
And so somehow that part is also not clear. What do you mean by constitutive approach?
So a constitutive approach is basically a new approach to naming which has been started in socio-onomastics. So for instance, reflexivity is basically the approach which was taken by early variationists like William Lebov. So in this perspective, what happens is that if you have a certain kind of a name, people will predict that you have a certain kind of a social background. So the name givers are seen as passive. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
but a constitutive approach sees name givers and the act of naming as something which is, there's a lot of variation between name giver. That is, it is the name giver who consciously decides, what kind of name should be given. And as I just mentioned in my paper, that you actively take certain social stances to identify with certain groups. And to not identify with certain groups. Like for instance, one of the parents said that I decided to give Sanskrit-derived Indian names, and he said that it was consciously done because my children were born in the north, and we wanted to give pan-Indian names to our children. So, so the parents are actively constructing their identities through the act of naming for themselves and for their children.
Okay, so it is really interesting paper, Smita. We can discuss that. But one thing, let's especially naming. If you look at in Indian tradition, we talked about the Sanskrit, how we got names, especially names of god and goddesses, and especially the Christian community. Also, you have also shown on your, especially in the data you have shown to us. So regarding this name giving ceremony, also if you look at in Indian tradition, we have name giving ceremony for different communities for that matter. And one thing, especially the linguistic aspect, I was wondering, let's say, especially in naming also, we have the linguistic aspect. Let's say in English, you have a name, you can somehow truncate that. You see, Gabriel is called Gavi, or some kind of
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
phonological or phonotactics are going on also in the names. So that is
Yes,
where pure linguistics part. So have you
yes,
seen
yes.
any pure linguistics, let's say,
Mm-hmm.
especially on your data set, where you can either generalize the personal name or truncated name or something? Do you have?
Truncated names, as I mentioned, that there was this particular period in among the Syrian Christians. Both the Christian groups have their own peculiarities in naming. So there was this period among Syrian Christians to give rhyming names to their children. So rhyming names would be like Simi, Shimi, Limi. And this was actually to show some kind of a sonority among the siblings. These were meaningless names. But today, such kinds of names, are not given consciously by parents, because they would rather keep, based on the interviews with them, they would rather give meaningful Indian names, to their children. So this kind of a rhyming pattern was actually common to Syrian Christians, but not the Telugu Catholics actually.
Okay. Okay,
So
thank you, Smita.